was, yeah, sure, sir.
So you are okay then?
Yes, sir.
You smell something, Rabbit? Fear.
Hated by critics, adored by audiences, and still quoted to this day, Super Troopers is one of the most outrageous tales of runaway success in independent film. But even after multiple cult follow-ups, the brains behind Club Dread and Beerfest struggled against the mainstream. Despite their legacy as the perfect time capsule for early aughts humor, the comedy troupe never quite became a household name. And sadly, even in the streaming age, Broken Lizard still seems to be chasing the kind of lightning strike you just can't recreate.
I want to fulfill his legacy by taking his place on your drinking team. I feel like I know all you guys. So we won't have that awkward get-to-know-each-other stage.
Perfect.
When it comes to cult comedy cliches, Super Troopers broke the mold, backed up, ran over it, and broke it again. Operating on the lowest of budgets, the film still somehow managed to look like $1 million. Starring real-life friends and the always deranged Brian Cox, each character feels completely earnest despite the ridiculous situations the not-so-good officers find themselves in. This hangout appeal single-handedly defined R-rated humor for one brief, legendary moment in time. But for many fans of the genre, the very idea of state troopers serving as affable stars sounds utterly inconceivable.
I'm freaking out, man.
You are freaking out, man.
Even in the most outrageous circumstances imaginable, the escalating pranks played by the Super Troopers come across as actual co-workers goofing off. And when Broken Lizard pulled off the ultimate gag of an infamously wild Sundance Film Festival premiere, it felt like cult comedies could actually do the impossible by making the mainstream. Broken Lizard member Jay Chandrasekhar recalled the storied Super Troopers debut. Very quickly, the laughs started to come, and by the middle of that opening, it was like people were gonna rip the seats out. It was just this explosion of laughter and energy that you couldn't deny. It was fantastic. But even though Super Troopers perfectly captured the alt comedy landscape of its time, the film just couldn't quite translate overseas for a true global takeover. Fortunately, unlike the predictable big studio comedies that dominated the box office at the time, Super Troopers made us feel like we were all in on the same joke. And DVD sales absolutely exploded over those eternally rewatchable shenanigans. Known as Broken Lizard, the comedy group responsible for Super Troopers was first formed in an actual fraternity. Post-graduation, these 5 real-life college bros re-teamed under one roof to perform live sketches and create comedy videos in New York City. Eventually finding their way to filmmaking, Jay, Kevin, Steve, Paul, and Eric became a one-stop shop for micro-budget movies. Taking inspiration from another indie comedy legend, the Broken Lizard boys were able to cultivate an insular environment to hone their skills.
And so if you're an independent filmmaker out there, you need to figure out a location you can get. I mean, a good example is Kevin Smith made the movie Clerks because he could get access to that little mini-mart.
With their then groundbreaking formula of incredibly inept authority figures, an escalating sense of absurdity, and improvised performance, it seemed like the crew could continue to coast on this core system. It kind of worked, at least for a while, because when the group released their slasher-centric follow-up Club Dread, the Broken Lizard recipe still seemed pretty tasty to those brave enough to try Coconut Pete's famous paella. With the same stalwart crew assembled, the comedy gang basically applied their brand of comedy to the slasher genre, got some good laughs, and called it a win on DVD, swapping Cox for an absolutely outlandish performance from the legendary Bill Paxton.
How do you not know the words to your own song?
I don't even remember making the album.
The flow and feel of the film is strikingly similar to Super Troopers. Even though several members play completely different kinds of characters, we're mostly just laughing at the fact that the perfectly hateable Farva is now Lars, a smooth, legitimate badass. Because Club Dread underperformed in pure ticket sales, ultimately slumping against the reputation of Super Troopers, the sophomore effort failed to attract much anticipation for another outing. In the meantime, Broken Lizard's most prolific director, Jay Chandrasekhar, scored his first big-budget blockbuster with a cinematic adaptation of The Dukes of Hazzard. Although the film crashed with critics, and reportedly even its own star Johnny Knoxville, The Dukes of Hazzard raked in a hefty sum at the box office. And after a call from comedy superstar and apparent fan of Club Dread, Adam Sandler, Broken Lizard decided it was time for another round.
Nothing to worry about. He's shaking the cobwebs off.
I got it. All right, here we go.
Serving as the culmination of all their hard work, Broken Lizard's Beerfest is perhaps the true peak of the comedy group. Armed with a bigger budget, the backing of the Sandman himself, and years of experience in the industry, Broken Lizard finally seemed poised to take comedy films by storm. Stacked with even more out-of-place Hollywood legends, the central cast of Friends are at the top of their game in terms of pure improv mastery. Beerfest puts absolutely everything on the table. Littered with jump scare-like jokes and essential quotes,
I wish it were winter. We could make it into ice blocks and skate on it, and then melt it in the springtime and drink it.
this third studio feature should have become an instant phenomenon despite those perpetually terrible reviews. In a filmography full of exceptional bro-downs, Beerfest is perhaps the ultimate hangout movie. And like the Basketballs, Airheads, and even the Dazed and Confused that came before it, moviegoers just don't appreciate a good hang until it's already over. Once again shattering DVD sales expectations, Beerfest became the sort of underground favorite you share with your friends and siblings on a regular basis. But as improvised comedy altered course during the mid-2000s with comparatively friendlier fare from Apatow Productions, Broken Lizard's brand felt like a slightly sillier and perhaps more out-of-pocket version of what Judd and friends were pulling off across town. While families got comfortable with the off-script humor of The Office, the low-stakes and laid-back approach of Beerfest seemed reserved for college kids and party animals. But when we really get to the heart of it, fans of adult American comedy just decided they didn't need to escape. It felt like there wasn't a place for the long-proposed Podfest sequel. But unlike Kevin Smith's Zack and Miri mentality of if you can't beat 'em, join 'em, Broken Lizard gave this modern approach no quarter. Because cult comedy, in the imitable words of Todd Wolfhouse,
I'll be damned if we're gonna let the good guys win!
and perhaps in a just world, Broken Lizard's next film, The Slammin' Salmon, could have proved the haters wrong. But for comedy fans who had already moved on to workplace comedies and internet humor, The Slammin' Salmon finally jumped the shark. Featuring the all-too-familiar faces of our old friends at Broken Lizard, the painfully unfunny film misused the serious talents of Michael Clarke Duncan.
Have to dominate the swordfish. Only then can you saute it.
Thanks, Jim.
As for the rest of the film, it would be all too easy to say that Broken Lizard was just having fun and making movies with low budgets and lower stakes. But because the effort falls so unbearably flat, you can't let them off the hook completely. Practically radiating with direct-to-the-bargain-bin energy, even the most casual fans of Super Troopers would be aghast to see such a fall from comedy's grace. While much can be said for those who keep the flame alight even as the culture of comedy changed, Broken Lizard made the critical mistake of playing the same old shtick, but with less and less ambition. And when former critical darlings such as The Office and various Apatow imitators began losing steam, the guys just riffing mentality fell completely out of favor. Committed to the bit, now perhaps to a fault, Broken Lizard eventually used crowdfunding to try and resurrect the one property that might redeem them. If things had worked out as they should, the story of Broken Lizard breaking Hollywood with Super Troopers 2 would have been incredibly epic. Proving the elite status of their fans, the group was able to raise $4.6 million and delivered the long-awaited sequel audiences so clearly craved. But once again, Broken Lizard had clearly refused to evolve past their decades-old origins. Super Troopers 2 failed to live up to the original in almost every way possible. While some of the original spark is still there, hidden deep in the recesses of aging comedians and stale jokes, the overall effect was worse than anger.
Your old job? I mean, construction supervisor.
And give up the chance to crack some Canuck melons? I don't think so, Broheim. Welcome to the fart zone!
Super Troopers 2 is straight up disappointing. Like a middling reunion tour for a band that was popular in childhood, the film is like watching your favorites go through the motions. And with the stakes of actual fans fronting the bill, it's a comedy act that often feels like it's literally being forced on everyone involved. With no Potfest in sight and a third Super Troopers installment locked and loaded, it appears as though the mid-times will keep on rolling. And since Super Troopers 3 will probably do enough numbers on streaming to justify its existence, it seems even more likely that Broken Lizard will ever be able to break another mold, which is brutal to hear because the group didn't fail because they weren't funny. They failed because they refused to adapt to a changing comedy landscape. By keeping their brand exactly the same, that sense of defiance only served to their own detriment. But since these trailblazers were once able to change the entire comedy system, it would be foolish to count the boys out when they're down. And that's it for this week's episode. So tell us, which Broken Lizard picture do you still own on DVD? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, be sure to hit like and subscribe to keep up with all our Nerdstalgic videos.